Welcome to Bluff City Life, everyone. I'm Gina Neely, and today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. After the liberation of Auschwitz in 1945, which today specifically commemorates, many Jewish survivors found their way to Memphis. In today's show, their stories will be told, their lives honored. From them, there is something we can all learn. So grab your lunch and come on back. We honor the lives during the Holocaust and those who survived. I'll take you to a museum that preserves their memory. Plus, reflections from our rabbis as we sit down together, sharing stories to rebuild, uplift, and fight against hatred. But first, a look at liberation and what it means generations later to create a world without hate. As the number of Holocaust survivors across the globe dwindles, their descendants increase, and alongside them, the Jewish population grows. Now in our city, we are fortunate to have a large and diverse Jewish community that welcomed hundreds of survivors at the end of the war. And they share why it's important to refresh ourselves with this part of history.
So remembering for me is, aside from historical things to know, this is very, very personal, obviously, to me, because this is my family.
Unfortunately, we're not capable of remembering those who passed because we never knew the ones who were murdered and those who were killed. My wife and I, and those of my age, we've had the chance, though, to interact with survivors and those who were liberated, and in many cases also the liberators. And I think that's becoming more important every year because when you do the math, World War II ended in 1945. That's 78, that's close to 80 years ago. There are fewer and fewer Holocaust survivors and fewer Holocaust liberators who are left.
There's two survivors here in Memphis, I think, who are one of the older couples ever, Sam and Frida Weinreich. And they've had each other since the camps, and they've been married this entire time for all of these years. And so having the two of them together and creating this beautiful family, the way that some of the survivors say to me is, you know, we're throwing it back in the face of the people who didn't want us to survive. We came here and we've had all these children, and our children have had all these children, and we're continuing the continuity of the Jewish people despite all of these terrible things that all these people did to try to stop us.
And I think their resilience is kind of helps us be able to see them and say, wow, you know, we need to cherish who we are. We need to walk in who we are and be confident in who we are because they survived, they came through this, and that gives us the ability to fight against the hatred that's current and that is trying to push back and silence an entire people.
I think being familiar with that Jewish history and understanding what our people have been through in so many different places and in so many different times can really give any Jewish person some of the strength that he or she needs to be able to cope with the difficulties of anti-Semitism that we face today.
You realize that this has impacted people and families and generations, and you realize that this could just as easily have happened to your family.
Unfortunately, none of my family escaped before the war. Actually, at the camps, when they separated them, the young and the old, so at that point is when my grandparents lost their parents. And they've always said to me something like, if I only would have known that was the last time I would have seen my mother. It was such chaos and such trauma of just, you know, being also in this cattle car for days and days on end.
As the survivors fade away and as the liberators fade away, we're lacking the firsthand knowledge of knowing what life was like before the Holocaust. Many of us have no idea of the fact that there were once thriving Jewish communities across Europe and in many parts of the world where today there's nothing left but tombstones, if there are even tombstones left. If we don't have contact with survivors, we also don't have that testimony. We don't have anyone who firsthand give voice to what they witnessed, what they experienced, to the true evil that had occurred, as well as to the rich and robust Jewish life that existed prior to the Holocaust.
It's really interesting being in this position. Thankfully, my grandparents were still around through most of my teen years, so I got to spend tons of time with them growing up, which was so special. They didn't talk about their experiences in the camps very much, understandably. I think there's kind of two different buckets of survivors. There's people who want to say all the things, and there's people who, for whatever reason, they're just not able to. My grandparents were two of the people who didn't share so much. My bubby, Giti, shared, and anytime she would ever say anything, we would write everything down because we wanted it all documented. Zadie Aaron barely spoke about it at all, but any person who needs to share what their truth is, we need to be there to listen to them.
So the stories of the Holocaust teach us the importance of standing together as Jewish people and non-Jewish people against hatred.
The concept is that if you think they're only after one group, you know, if you don't stand up, then there's another group, and then you don't stand up, and then they're after your group, and there's nobody left to stand up for you. So yeah, hate has no bounds. And also when you think that, you know, it's only a certain piece, I know people who there may be, you know, maybe like an eighth Jewish, or like there were stories about this, and they didn't consider themselves Jews, but the Nazis did. So it doesn't even matter, like, if you think you really are or you aren't. If they just want to kill you, they'll make up some, you know, thing that you are. So
when we think about the Holocaust, we think about the atrocities, and we think about hate, and we think about different groups of people, not just Jews, but there were gay and lesbian people and people with disabilities who were also persecuted. And what I think the world needs to see now is that there's enough room for everybody, is that everybody is special and everybody is different in their own way, and nobody's better than anybody else.
We have gotten to this point in this day and age that we don't want to talk about difficult subjects. We have differences of opinions, and we criticize others without really communicating. By talking about the lessons of history, it opens conversation to discuss how people perceive the tragedies that happen in and around the world, and reminds us that every life is valuable, and the loss of one life is analogous to the loss of a whole nation or civilization.
How vital for all of us to come together to keep this from happening again. Today, we'll meet descendants of Holocaust survivors and liberators to open the discussion for deeper understanding, from what we know now to how we can move forward. Stick with me, Bluff City Life will be right back.